Good evening. On TV47 News tonight, the first sitting member of parliament to be found guilty of graft is sentenced, even as his defense calls for mercy on the former military man. Another fire destroys livelihood of over 6,000 traders at the Gikomba market. Will a perimeter wall and CCTV cameras stop the menace? President Uhuru Kenyatta announces that reopening of the country is dependent on the preparedness of the counties in combating COVID-19. And reprieve for a man wrongfully accused of rape by his daughters, as the court is set to retry the case after the accusers withdrew the testimony citing coaching. TV47 News tonight with me, Abubakar Abdullahi, begins right now. Anne Wairimu is our sign language interpreter to our top story. Now, Sirisia, a member of parliament, has been slapped with a 7-year jail term in prison or a total of 727 million shillings fine. His co-accused, Grace Wahungu, has also been fined 707 million Kenya shillings. The two were found guilty of defrauding the National Cereals and Produce Board over 300 million shillings. The two were shareholders in a company named Erad Supplies and General Contractors Limited and pocketed the money despite supplying nothing to the Cereals Board. The two have 2 weeks to file an appeal. Elsewhere, the Ministry of Health, in conjunction with the Ministry of ICT, has today launched a COVID-19 mitigation contact center at the Kenyatta National Hospital, targeted at aiding frontline healthcare workers. According to the Health CAS, Dr. Mercy Mwangangi, the center will play a big role in combating depression among healthcare workers who are frontliners during this COVID-19 pandemic.
I wanted to speak to a counselor.
Thank you, Jemima, for calling. Downstairs.
Today, we had 3,918 samples that were tested. 178 people tested positive for coronavirus. This brings to total our country caseload to 5,384 so far. And cumulatively, we have tested 314,000. All the positive cases, except 3, are foreigners. We have 123 males and 55 females. And our youngest today is a 1-year-old infant, and the oldest is 76. Nairobi is leading today with 100 cases, followed by Kajiado with 21. We have Migori having 17, Kiambu 16, Busia 8, Mombasa 7, Machakos 4, Nakuru 2, Uasin Gishu, Kericho, and Taveta each have 1 case. It's important to note and to appreciate that today we've discharged 34 patients. This brings the total number of recoveries to 1,857. We have also lost 2 patients today, sadly, and therefore our tally in terms of fatalities comes to 132.
Moving on, the government is set to install CCTV security cameras in Gikomba market as part of the solutions to curb the perennial fires in the market. The government will also provide compensation to 400 households who have been displaced after their properties were destroyed. Eli Logova tells us more.
The early Thursday morning fire razed down a section of Gikomba market, leaving owners of business counting losses as they were unable to rescue their properties. The government has now launched investigations to identify individuals believed to be behind the current burning down of property at Gikomba market. The government is also considering relocating Gikomba traders to other markets.
We urge you to be cooperative with the security agencies, with our intelligence agencies, so that we can at last bring these guys who caused this to book and face justice. But
in the meantime, the government will provide compensation to nearly 400 households who were displaced after their properties were destroyed in Thursday's fire incident.
We will do the final infrastructure around here, a perimeter wall, so that we isolate, and we are promised by the community here that this is a building that is going to absorb in the upward of 10,000 of the people here.
Small business owners who were hard hit by the fire were left staring at their properties as they went up in smoke.
Tutaenda wapi na tutafanya nini? Mimi nimetoka Kisumu nikuje nifanye hiyo biashara. Nimesomeza watoto na hiyo biashara. Watoto wapati kazi na hiyo biashara. Mimi nahangaika, naleta mali yangu kidogo ya kukula. Inapotea na moto.
Sasa sisi mbele yote hizo sita zimechomeka zote mpaka nikabaki tu ya niko nayo kwa mkono. Watoto pia niko kwa nyumba waende shule. Nyumba pia na yenyewe inafaa nilipe, corona pia ndio hiyo.
The tragedy that has hit Gikomba market once again has left these traders counting losses amounting to millions of shillings and now seeking answers from the government as to who is responsible for these perennial fires. Eli Logova, TV47 from Gikomba market in Nairobi.
Well, fires in Gikomba market are not a new thing. Neither are they recent, but quite regular. Sarcastically, they even have a name, the annual Gikomba Fire Festival. The pattern in how these fires have been occurring now begs the question of what causes them. In the past 2 years, traders and leaders have seemed convinced that they are cases of arson. But who are behind this crime? Our reporter David Mudoka reports.
It is not the first time, nor is it the second, not even the third. A familiar scene now at the Gikomba market in Nairobi. Charred iron, burnt timber, and ashes culminating into what traders have termed a massive loss in millions of shillings year in, year out, and arguably the most destructive of fires, claiming 15 lives in June 28, 2018. But the trend in which these fires have been breaking out in Kenya's biggest informal market continues to raise eyebrows.
Kwa sababu moto haiwezi katokea pale ilipuke halafu ikuje kama inachoma hapa yote kwa mara moja. Kwa hivyo wale ambao wanachoma wanajua ile kitu ambao wanafanya. Hatuwezi kusema nani, lakini serikali ichunguze kabisa.
Watu wasipime hii soko, wanakuja kujenga structure yao, isemekana ilikuwa ni wakati wa COVID. Ilikuwa ni wakati wanapima wakijua ni kitu gani kinaendelea. Na hao watu wamesanyang'anya watu wengi.
Over the years, even government officials, among them former devolution CS Mwangi Kiunjuri, have admitted to suspecting foul play in how the fires start. On Thursday, Interior Permanent Secretary Karanja Kibicho appealing to traders to volunteer information they deem helpful in putting behind bars those responsible.
we cannot believe that it is possible that a tragedy of this magnitude can take place, and you are clueless about how it started. And we are urging you to volunteer any information that you have to the RC. We are going to open a desk at the RC's office at Nyayo House, so that any information that you have that can help us trace the perpetrators of this thoughtless action very quickly.
On 18th March 2014, a raging fire destroyed property worth millions of shillings at the Gikomba market. This near Shauri Moyo Lower Bridge at around 8 p.m. as the traders watched on in despair. In October the same year, traders watched in despair as their stalls again went up in flames at around 10 p.m. Property valued at hundreds of millions of shillings lost. On 23rd January the following year, another fire broke out at 1 a.m., reducing clothes and shoes worth millions to ashes. 23rd June 2015, another fire razed down more than half of Gikomba market. The following year, 2016, Gikomba did not record any fire incidents, but little did the traders know that it was the proverbial calm before the storm. On 10th September 2017, at around 7 a.m., another fire gutted down property worth millions of shillings. Traders of second-hand clothes and shoes were the worst hit. On 6th October same year, another fire broke out at around 3 a.m. on a Friday morning. On June 28, 2018, arguably Gikomba's darkest day, 15 lives were lost as fire raised timber and second-hand wear stalls at the Kwambao section. Then on 6th February 2019, Wednesday night, at around 10 p.m., traders once again lost property of unknown value to a raging fire. No casualties were reported. On Thursday morning, another fire in the same market, claiming 6,000 businesses. The big question still lingers: who is or are behind these fires in Gikomba? David Mudhoka, TV47.
Moving on, the feud between the Nairobi City County Government and the Nairobi Metropolitan Services continues. Today, Nairobians were treated to drama between the two warring factions of Nairobi County MCAs, the bone of contention being the budgetary allocation between the county government and the Nairobi Metropolitan Services. Mwangi Maina reports.
The squabbles outside Nairobi County Assembly Thursday morning. Daggers drawn. At least not for the first time, chaos are being witnessed in this assembly, and of course, notable MCAs running the show. Thursday's dispute was anchored on the Nairobi County budgetary allocation for the year 2020-2021. House Speaker Beatrice Elachi and about 40 MCAs were forced to spend part of their night at the assembly after receiving information that goons had been hired to bar them from accessing the chambers when the budget was expected to be read.
Abdi Hassan Guyo, together with Paul Kados and some people that they were calling Jubilee bigwigs, I do not know them, had a meeting last night at Kasolin, and they said that they have to come here at 4 in the morning. So we came, and our mandate here and our job here is just to protect that budget-making process.
Some leaders, including Abdi Guyo, were arrested and taken to Central Police Station for being behind the chaos. MCAs who are opposing the 26.4 billion shillings allocation to the Nairobi Metropolitan Services were locked out.
Wale wengi ni wale tu hawajakuja kwa sababu wataki maneno ya vita. Sisi tumejitolea kwa sababu tunajua kuna serikali.
A faction of the MCAs want the budget to the NMS slashed and were determined to stop the budget reading that eventually did not take place. The speaker was locked inside the assembly while some MCAs were demanding entry.
The money that is allocated for them to change Nairobi, we are all working for the benefits of Nairobians. So we cannot keep fighting and make Nairobi a battlefield where we are fighting over taxpayers' money. It is quite unfortunate and impossible.
Ile ilipitishwa na treasury. After kusikizana na treasury na president na sisi county, hiyo ndiyo budget itapita. Ile president anataka ambayo amepiga hesabu na akaona itasaidia NMS ifanye kazi. Hakuna kitu kingine kitafanyika hapa.
The dispute between the county government and the NMS continues to exacerbate. 6 days ago, the High Court dealt a blow to the deed of transfer of functions from the county to the national government. The court ruled that the deal was unlawful and gave the national government 90 days to rectify the illegality.
As you can see, I've been denied entry, and with no prior communication, I don't know what is happening. I'm just being told that the people who are outside are enough.
Tumekuwa hapa na tutakaa hapa mpaka tupitishe ile kitu rais ambayo alisema tupitishe, and that is what we are fighting for.
The Labour Court has also suspended a gazette notice by the NMS boss Major General Mohammed Badi that appointed new members to the Nairobi Water and Sewerage Company Board. Mwangi Maina, TV47, Nairobi.
Elsewhere, 2 people have been shot dead in Lesos, Nandi County after police clashed with demonstrators in the area. The demonstrators who torched a police house were protesting the arrest of a border operator who had flouted COVID-19 rules. Calvin Chitwa reports.
The protesters claimed the man who was identified as Lazarus Tirop was shot dead at Lesos Trading Center following an argument with police officers who had arrested a border operator for not wearing a mask. The man is said to have been shot and killed instantly by the police officer who fired at him while he was trying to negotiate for the release of the arrested man.
Tunataka maskari wote ambao wako Lesos hii wote, hata moja asibaki, tuanze mpya.
Pikipiki zenye ziko huko kwa polisi ni mingi. Kama sasa hizi pikipiki ni kama ni sawa, kwa sababu watu wa bodaboda wanafanyia hawa kazi. Tunataka haki.
Nandi County Commissioner Olaka Kutswa calmed the protesters, promising them action will be taken.
Mambo imeulizwa ya transfer, hiyo tumekubaliana ni leo. Sina mnayo.
Nandi County leaders led by Governor Stephen Sang, Senator Samson Cherargei, and Nandi Hills MP Alfred Keter have condemned the incident and demanded the immediate arrest of the police officer involved in the killing.
Mapolisi hawa hapa sahi wote wataondolewa hapa. Haiwezekani hawatabaki.
According to Anne Makori, the chairperson of the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, they have already dispatched a rapid response investigation team at the scene that has initiated investigations into the matter with a view of establishing how the shooting happened and if the force used was necessary. Calvin Chitwa, TV47, Nandi County.
You're watching TV47 News Tonight with me, Abu Bakar Abdullahi. 17 minutes past the hour. Time for us to take a short break. We still have a lot lined up for you. I will be back with much more after this break. Welcome back to TV47 News Tonight with me, Abu Bakar Abdullahi. Thank you for staying with us. Let's get to more news. Now, the Senate will tomorrow determine the fate of embattled Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru. The Senate Select Committee that was probing her impeachment spent the better part of the day preparing the report that will be tabled in Senate tomorrow. And as Elizabeth Mutuku now reports, the Senate is also on trial, and its decision on the matter will be a verdict on its image.
Julius Musyoki Wambua.
The 11-member committee will table its report in the House on Friday. Speaker Kenneth Lusaka, while calling for the special sitting, said the business to be transacted at the sitting shall be consideration of the report of the special committee on the proposed removal from office by impeachment of Governor Anne Waiguru.
Council, through the chair, studying Kirinyaga County Assembly studying orders.
The Malala-led committee can either uphold the allegations against the governor or reverse it. The 11-member committee will determine if the allegations were substantiated or not, and if the allegations were not substantiated, then no action will be taken against her. However, the House may take a vote on the allegations if the allegations are substantiated.
Any transgression on any law is a transgression on the people of Kenya, and it's a transgression on the Republic of Kenya. The members of the County Assembly of Kirinyaga County, 23 out of 33, returned a verdict. There was not even a favorable vote in favor of the governor during the impeachment. Therefore, honorable members, the people of Kirinyaga exercise their sovereignty through the elected representatives under Article 1.
Waiguru is facing charges, among others, violation of procurement laws, amongst other charges, though Waiguru denied all charges.
This has meant taking political decisions, including to support His Excellency the President in his BBIA initiative, which I believe is in the interest of Kirinyaga and all Kenya. Honorable Senators, my stand has made me enemies with people of deep influence and deep pockets, inside and outside my county.
The committee has promised to be fair to both sides.
A special sitting that we will be expected to table the report. So I would like to invite all Kenyans to anticipate a fair ruling on Friday afternoon, and I believe by then we shall have come up with a ruling.
23 out of 33 MCAs in Kirinyaga voted to oust Waiguru. The outcome of the select committee will determine whether the nation will continue having faith on the Senate or not. Elizabeth Mutuku, TV47 Nairobi.
Thank you, Elizabeth Mutuku, for that report. Now, listen to this. There could be a light at the end of the tunnel for one Julius Musyoki Wambua, a man who was sentenced to life imprisonment in 2011 for defiling his daughter. The two key persons in the case filed a submission recanting their testimonies and therefore opening a window for retrial. And as Nancy Kimuyu now reports, the court has directed the respondent to go through the affidavit and file their response before the commencement of the retrial on July 14th, 2020.
Julius Musyoki Wambua found himself confined at the committee maximum security prison after one of her daughters accused him of defilement, a statement she later retracted in 2019, stating that she had been coerced by her mother to accuse her father falsely. It is after this revelation that the court opened a window for an appeal, which later proved to be unsuccessful at the Court of Appeal in Nairobi in 2019, since Musyoki's elder daughter, who testified in favor of her sister, had not recanted her statement.
The constitutional petition touching on fundamental constitutional issues, and parties must be given opportunity to not only ventilate their cases fully, but must also adequately prepare for the same. Otherwise, this court will, under the guise of upholding the right for fair trial, be in fact infringing upon the same.
Wambua, through the Kenya National Human Rights Commission lawyers Cyrus Maweu, Victor Kamau and Judith Lema, told Justice George Oduga that his elder daughter, who resides in Dar es Salaam, had too recanted her testimony. Both daughters' affidavits have since been submitted awaiting commencement of the retrial. The case, which enlists Kenya National Human Rights Commission as the second petitioner, the Attorney General and Director of Public Prosecution as first and second respondents, is set to begin afresh on the 14th of July 2020. Julius and his wife had been separated when the defilement charges were brought against him in 2007.
Filed further affidavit. It is only fair that the respondents be given an opportunity to fully digest its contents and prepare to deal with the same. Consequently, this matter is taken out from today's hearing. Leave is granted to the second respondent to respond to the said affidavit, if necessary, within 14 days.
Reporting for TV47, I'm Nancy Kimuyu.
Remember, you're watching TV47 News Tonight with me, Abu Bakar Abdullahi. You can be part of this broadcast. Send us a message on 22047. Our discussion after half an hour will be on women politics and women empowerment. But let's move with more news now. And horticulture farmers are among the worst hit by the ongoing coronavirus pandemic in the country. And with a slow global economy, many farmers have been counting losses following the closure of many borders and airspace. Moige Williams spoke to some of the exporters and files a story of how the pandemic has hit them hard.
Export of fresh produce from Embu County has been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. Jumbo Fresh, one of the companies involved in export of fresh produce, is counting losses to close to 30 million Kenya shillings in the last 3 months. 100 of its workers have as well been rendered jobless. The company has lost 60 tons due to cancellation of air travels.
Hii ikiwa season ya pili, season ya tatu ndio inaanza na hatujui tutaanza vipi, kwa sababu sasa tunahitaji pesa ingine ya kununua mbegu, tunahitaji kurudisha wafanyikazi ambao huwa tunaajiri wafanyikazi 50.
Naweza kuongea na clients wetu na wamepromise watachukua hii mimea ikifika wakati wa high season. Hiyo ni wakati wa kutoka September ambayo inaitwa winter season upande wa Ulaya.
And with the slow global economy, companies that have been exporting their produce to Europe are now opting for Africa and local markets. Lockdowns in most countries has affected many Kenyan companies.
Mimea iko na a lot of medicinal value. Inasaidia sana, ina act kama antioxidant, na pia pale Italy wanatumia kwa Italian dishes. Inatumika kama spices kwa chakula. Ni vile hapa Afrika tutumii sana, lakini kule Ujerumani na nchi za Ulaya wanazitumia zaidi sababu iko na umuhimu, medicinal value.
The county government of Embu is however promising to intervene in reviving the already hit companies. The Martin Wambora government says it will offer loans to the companies.
County kupitia His Excellency Martin Wambora anataka value addition infanyiwe Embu. So vile nitafanya, nitashirikiana na Kenya Industrial Estate, director kwa hapa Embu, na Kildi, hao nitashirikiana na wao, nione vile tutakuwa na mkutano pamoja, because wanakuwa na facility loans.
Horticulture is among the country's top foreign exchange earners. For TV47, I am Moige William.
Then cover the box.
Thank you, Moige William, for that report. Elsewhere, approximately 10 days to the lapse of the curfew and cessation of movement of restriction in the country, and the Council of Governors is proposing against the lifting of both restrictions for as long as the COVID-19 curve is not flattened. Zainab Mohammed with the details.
The Council of Governors is working on developing a simplified version.
In their fourth virtual extraordinary summit with the President on Thursday, the governors have proposed a number of recommendations on protocols of inter-county movement, reopening of the economy, and the gradual reopening of the places of worship.
We propose the following on inter-county movement.
On inter-county movement, the governors are proposing that cessation of movement should not be lifted, the curfew should be maintained with the current hours, counties to extend waiver of cess for another 3 months, and upon lapse of the waiver period, payment of cess to be done.
We are in support of the gradual reopening of the economy.
On protocols of reopening of the economy, the governors are proposing that counties with high number of COVID-19 cases should not be opened without consideration. First reopening to start with essential but low-risk sectors, economic activities such as markets to operate in the open and schools to remain closed. Finally, on the gradual reopening of the places of worship, the governors recommend that individuals with underlying health conditions to stay away from worship areas, places of worship to adopt contactless tithe and offering systems, places of worship to ensure proper record of attendees, provision of appropriate facilities such as hand-washing facilities, services to be scheduled to several sessions with 30 people only, and development of legislation to govern these rules and sanctions. On the other hand, President Uhuru Kenyatta says the reopening of the country will depend upon a number of factors, including readiness of counties to handle a surge in cases of COVID-19, the overall behavior of Kenyans, and their discipline, among other factors.
County governments and their readiness to respond to new imported cases of infection will also equally largely determine our national readiness to reopen the country as a whole. And this is because the nation is the sum total of our 47 counties. And if the counties have met the necessary thresholds, then the nation as a whole will be ready to reopen.
Deputy President William Ruto, who is in support of the reopening, also urged Kenyans to adhere to the government's guidelines in order to curb the virus.
Sisi wote ni wa Kenya na hakuna Mkenya mkubwa kuliko mwenzake. Sisi wote ni kiwango kimoja chini ya katiba na sheria ya Kenya.
As intergovernmental discussions continue to take place, one thing is clear: beating COVID-19 pandemic will require a collective effort by both the government and the citizens. For TV47, I'm Zainab Mohammed.
Elsewhere, in the fight against COVID-19, only 20 students will be allowed in class per session if schools reopen in September. The biggest headache now being the practicality of that particular proposal, that the shortage of teachers and the bad state of infrastructure in many schools in the country face. Our reporter Andrin Kileme did a spot check and has filed the following report.
Only 15 to 20 learners will be allowed in each class when schools reopen in September. This as stated by the Ministry of Education in a bid to adhere to the Ministry of Health regulations in the fight against COVID-19.
Been advised by the Ministry of Health that a class should have between 15 and 20 children.
But how practical is it to maintain the 1.5 meter rule in schools and have a maximum of 20 learners in a single classroom? Here in Kenya, most schools and especially public schools accommodate more than 50 learners in a classroom. For instance, in Mwiki Primary School in Kiambu County, there is a total of 3,551 pupils against a total of 41 classes only. So if the school was to put 20 learners in each class, then 136 more classes would be required. But let's assume schools will reopen gradually and have the Standard 8s and Form 4s report first. Will the proposal to have 20 learners in each class still be practical? In Mwiki Primary School, there are 649 KCPE candidates. So if the 649 were to be placed in groups of 20, then the school will have 32 streams for Standard 8 pupils. This then begging the question of whether the school has enough teachers to attend to all learners in their respective classrooms. In Langas Primary School, Eldoret, a total of 1,700 pupils are registered. So again, if the 1,700 pupils were to be distributed in groups of 20, the school would require to have 85 classrooms. The government has so far set aside 2 billion shillings to employ 10,000 intern teachers 2 billion shillings for construction of additional classrooms, while 1.9 billion shillings will be used to acquire 250,000 locally fabricated desks. It is now evident that the Ministry of Education will need to invest more on improving schools' infrastructure to be able to achieve this fully. Andrin Kilemi, TV47.
36 minutes past the hour, time for us to take another short break here on TV47 News Tonight with me, Abu Bakar Abdullahi. I'll be back after this break. Welcome back. Thank you for choosing to stay with us. I'm Abu Bakar Abdullahi. You're watching TV47 News Tonight with me, Abu Bakar Abdullahi. We're getting to that segment where we will have this discussion that I earlier on preempted on power, politics, women, power and empowerment. Our guests tonight who are joining me for this discussion, Nerima Wako, the Executive Director of Siasa Place, Mercy Jelimo, Programs Officer, Leadership and Governance Center for Rights, Education and Awareness, and Nduko Omatigire, who is the Secretary General of Ukweli Party. Thank you all for making time for us this evening.
Thank you.
All right, Nerima, let me start with you. If one is to ask why have women over the years lagged behind, what will the answer be?
Oh, that's not a very nice question. I believe it's a difficult question due to the societal and systemic structures that exist. It's extremely complicated because when you're talking about women's role and the women's stand, we have to talk about culture, we have to talk about tradition, you have to talk about religion. So we're talking about centuries upon decades of a notion that a woman is to be seen and not heard. And then here we are talking about modern times where we're talking about engaging women in political leadership and engagement. But I do have to mention that where we've seen a spike in terms of women's participation, even when we talk about the labor workforce, we can look at the United States, and it took a world war for men to go into war and not being able to work in factories, for women to be told, okay, now we need you to enter the workforce, and now we need you to be able to work in a factory. And that's where we saw a spike of women entering the workforce. So it's only during a time of crisis.
All right, Nerima, you say it is society that is responsible. I suppose this society has both men and women in it, isn't it?
Yes, it does. It has both men and women in it, but it's more complicated for women, because what do you do when in your Bible, if you're Christian, it says that a woman cannot speak on matters concerning issues, but then you're still part of the society. For Kenya itself, women are 51% plus more than men. So if the majority population is not supposed to speak, yet we are needed to build a society, then it's not that simple. So even when we're talking about issues such as FGM, you'll find sometimes it's the women who will encourage it because of an understanding of social culture. And they're the ones who are also instilling this in younger women. But
right,
it's
let me bring
their own doing.
Nerima, let me bring in Mercy to the discussion. Mercy, over the years, Kenya's constitutional change has seen laws that are, one would suppose, are women-friendly in such. According to Article 27 of Kenya's 2010 Constitution, the Marriage Act, the Matrimonial Property Act, the Land Registration Act, the Land Act, the Law of Succession Act. Despite this enhancement in laws, one will suppose, is it having a trickle-down effect to women?
Thank you very much, Abu Bakar. I just want to say that all those laws that you've mentioned were laws that were recently passed and were passed when the Kenyan National, the Parliament, both the National Assembly and the Senate, allowed for women's political participation. It's only until when we got the new constitution in 2010 that all those laws that you've highlighted were passed. So to some extent, I just want to use that to show that women's leadership really is about inclusive and equitable laws. But once you get those laws, there's also the aspect of implementation. And in our country, I think we are lacking, and we hardly implement the laws that we have. You can find our constitution expressly provides for women's leadership. We have very progressive laws within our political party, the Political Parties Act, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Act. All those laws, to some extent, expressly provide for the participation of women.
This begs the question I'm asking: are these laws having a trickle-down benefit effect to women?
And that's what I'm saying, that, you know, if you are not implementing them, then you cannot have that trickle down effect, because having the laws is one thing, implementing those laws is another thing. So we, as a country, we hardly implement the laws that we have in place. So there can be no trickle down effect if you do not implement the laws, and if you are, you know, if you have problems with your governance system.
All right, let me bring in Duko to the discussion. A recent national health survey found that almost half of Kenya's women aged between 14 to 49 say they have been beaten, harassed, or raped, often by someone they know. Why is society seemingly harsh on women?
I think it follows the perspective that Nerima shared, that historically we maintained structures that are anti-women and anti-girls. We've translated this into practice that men who violate and abuse women and girls are guaranteed impunity. They get away with it. And so what we are seeing in society is condonment of anti-women, anti-girls behavior and practice. And even when we have rules and regulations, we have a progressive sexual offences law and statutes in place. But because of the underlying hatred, the misogyny that underlies societal structures, and this is a long historical factor, that violators and abusers of women get away with it. So in my view, it's a failure of governance, it's a failure of the state, which does not surprise us, because the state is still grounded on patriarchal foundations.
All right, Nduko, let me bring back Nerima to the discussion. I was going through some of your interviews, and outstandingly in May 2018, in an interview with Parent Magazine, you said, and I quote, "It is very difficult for women to break through the barriers of politics." What makes it difficult for women to break these barriers, Nerima?
Absolutely. First, it's just the financial capital. When men enter politics, they will rely on fundraising, perhaps through peers. And that's a different sense, because even when we talk about the household structure, a lot of them, their man is the one who goes out to work and all that. Even women do work. But unfortunately, the resources that they bring back home is distributed first to the husband before even her herself. And so she doesn't have those sorts of resources. And a lot of times, even women, when they think about fundraising, as much as they're involved in chamas or SACCOs, first thing will be their families, second thing will be their stability, last might be politics, might be.
Nerima,
so
is it a question? Nerima,
also,
is it a question of resources or just the will? And I ask you this question bearing in mind that out of the approximate 14,000 individuals who vied for elective positions, only 2,077 were women, which accounts for a mere 15%.
there are women there who are willing, but there are very many women who I've spoken to who have vied for a position such as an MCA. That's the position you're talking about. And they are stripped. Where have you heard of men losing their clothes because they are standing in front of a public rally? But that happens occasionally for women. And we are talking about different playing fields. It's not that women are willing. They are actually harassed more than men. And there are statistics that show that. Even when you look at social media, when a woman joins politics, the insults that are hurled at her and her husband and her family. And even to consider that she enters politics, to be single and young, that is seen as a big no-no. And those are the different disparities where women are held to a higher standard than men in entering politics and while they are in politics as well.
And who is setting these standards upon which women are being judged?
It's us. It's the society again, because again, we find it difficult to see women as leaders outside the home. At home, people will be very quick to say, my mother is the one who controls everything. If it wasn't for my mother, I was raised by a single mother. And then that same individual in the same breath will say, I can never vote for a woman because they cannot be able to lead us in politics.
All right, let me bring Mercy to the discussion. Mercy, these days often lots of men and lots of women equally self-identify as feminist. It often means different things to different people. First, is the terming of activistic rights and marches such as feminism helpful in progressing women ideals and ideas?
That's an interesting question. Of course, feminism is an ideal that people believe that women are equal and all human beings are equal. So as an ideal, I think it's a powerful ideal. It's about making our society equal, progressing our society, moving our society forward. So all those movements and people that identify with feminism, I think are people that are convicted about certain ideals and certain perspectives, and people who want better for their society. So there is nothing wrong with the term feminism. I know around this country people have negative connotation of the word feminism, but feminism is just about trying to ensure that we all live in a just and equal society, all of us. But just to go back to the discussion that you were having earlier on with Nerima, where you talked about only 2,077 women offering themselves for position.
Elective positions, yes.
For elective position, yes, and this is at the county assembly. But when you look at the number of challenges, the number of hurdles these women have to go to get through that, you will clearly understand why we have those low numbers.
Mercy, let me interject you at that point. Often these challenges are generalized. Do you mind giving us the specifics so that we know what these problems, in your own view, are?
Yeah, I think Nerima has already alluded to some of these challenges. I think about social norms. We have attitudes and beliefs that do not believe in women's leadership. We have those structural barriers. We have cultural institutions, political parties that do not promote women's leadership. We have, in our country, we are making it rather difficult for someone to vie for any position. When you look at the amounts of money that you need to pay to vie as a governor in this country to the political parties, when you look at the processes that you have to go through to then stand or vie, those are very many things. And as Nduko said earlier on, the historical injustices, let me call them because they are injustices, the historical injustices that have been meted on women cannot allow women to play equally on with those kinds of expectations and requirements. So those challenges are many, and those challenges are the challenges that continue to that women continue to grapple with.
All right, let me bring Duko to the discussion now. According to the Global Gender Gap Report 2020, in which Kenya ranked 109 out of 123, over the past 50 years, only 85 countries out of 153 covered in that report have had a female head of state, meaning a female president. Is there a fear of electing women to positions of power?
I think it illustrates the barriers that both Mercy and Nerima have highlighted. And basically what those numbers tell us is the global nature of patriarchy, is the global nature of misogyny. It's not an Africa-specific problem. That you'll find earlier on you asked who sets these standards. These standards get set so early in life when a daughter in a family is reminded that they are less than their brother, when they are reminded very early that there are toys they can't play with, there are games they cannot play. And so society embraces all these exclusionary tactics from very early, to a point that in the 21st century, where no one has a reason to doubt equality and dignity of and rights of both women and men, that people still cling to these societal codes, cultural codes that are transplanted into policy, they are transplanted into laws to continue excluding women. And when you look at the barriers that Mercy talks about, when you look at the historical exclusion of women in economics, in leadership, in access to resources, they manifest themselves in heavily masculinized politics where money is a factor, where your ability to be violent and vulgar earns you votes. So all these combine to disadvantage women in politics, not just at the presidential level, but even at the lowest level of representation.
All right, Nduko, let me bring Nerima back to the discussion. What can Kenya learn from countries like Ethiopia and Rwanda? Cases in which, for instance, in Ethiopia, 10 out of the 20 positions appointed by the Prime Minister went to women. The country has its first female president, the first female Supreme Court president. A case as well in Rwanda where Rwanda has the highest wild percentage of women in national parliament. What are the lessons to learn from there?
I would say the changes in development that we can clearly see in both Rwanda and Ethiopia. And even at the moment, the airline industry for Ethiopia is doing better than Kenya. There are several aspects in terms of development in Rwanda, where even the president supports a lot of the Rwandan youth projects and initiatives, something that I cannot say the same for this country. So just to see that there's a big disparity when it comes to progress and how important it is to have different voices in decision making to be able to come up with solutions that are more well-rounded to support the entire community.
All right, Nerima Wako from Siasa Place, Mercy Jalimo, Programs Officer, Leadership and Governance Center for Rights, Education and Awareness, Nduko Omatagire, who is the Secretary General of Ukweli Party. Thank you for making time for us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
All right, well, that does not, of course, bring us to an end of the show, but it takes us on a short break. We still have some news for you. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Now, detectives based in Kilimani, Nairobi, are in pursuit of robbers caught on CCTV camera stealing from a man in Nairobi's Kilimani estate. Elsewhere, police in Mombasa have arrested 9 suspects involved in car breaking in and theft following an operation in Nyali. Muhammad Ali reports.
It is 6:40 a.m. when Kenyans are on their way to work. This man is seen walking towards his daily activities. A few seconds later, he is attacked by 2 people with weapons that look like a pistol and a knife. And in less than 5 seconds, they disappear with his bag and his phone. Kilimani detectives have begun an investigation to find the robbers. Elsewhere, 9 suspects of car theft who have been harassing residents of Mombasa area have been arrested by Nyali police officers following a severe operation. Several rolls of bang, shisha pot, a packet of shisha, 100,000 shillings, and mobile phones were found. The suspects have been placed in custody as further investigations continue. Muhammad Ali, TV47.
Let's get to the world of sports now, and Nairobi City Stars fullback Wesley Onguso has vowed to return to the national team after a 3-year blackout. Our sports reporter caught up with Onguso and has filed the following report.
He has made headlines for weeks and counting after images of him riding a boda flocked the internet, receiving applause and backlash in equal measure. But Nairobi City Stars left fullback Wesley Onguso is an unfazed man.
Kama wale walikuwa kwa social media wanaongea maybe mambo si mazuri, na washukuru sana. Tunarudi City Stars Premier League. Onguso amerudi tena KPL. Tutapatana kwenye stadi. Utaona tena mtu wa Nduthi anazidi kuwafurahisha. Unajua siku hizi wananiita mtu wa Nduthi.
The 25-year-old has been frozen out of the national team since 2017, but he is not lying down just yet. Onguso is out to wage a momentous return to the Harambee Stars squad.
Ni miaka mitatu kutoka tulikuwa 2017. 2017 ndio mara ya mwisho Onguso kuwa kwenye timu ya taifa. Lakini 2021 ama 2020 Onguso atakuwa amerudi kwenye timu ya taifa. Mtamuona tena jamaa wa boda kwenye timu ya taifa tena.
The soft-spoken Kangware native is a darling of the locals, most of whom are fellow boda riders, and they do say they have Onguso's back until he's back to the top.
Ile game yenyewe ucheza naona alichezea hapa mtaani. Akienda huko lazima pia sisi tumfuate juu ni kijana wetu, unaona? Ni ndugu yetu. Nikidhani lazima penye yako lazima tukue naye pamoja. Lazima tushikane naye mzuri.
Before inking a deal with City Stars, Onguso plied his trade with a number of clubs, among them Mathare United, Western Stima, Sofapaka and Gor Mahia. Reporting for TV47, I'm Julius Juma.
Elsewhere. Let's watch. That brings us to the end of tonight's edition of TV47 News Tonight with me, Abu Bakar Abdullahi. On behalf of the entire team that made this production possible, bye for now, but enjoy the rest of our programs.
Authentic, natural, planned.